Welcome to all new episode of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. This is Corey Richmond, joined as always by Jason Brooks. As we enter 2021, as more things change, they remain the same. As wrestling, entertainment, movies is an outlet to get away from the tragedies and the insanity of the real world. Jay, I wish we were coming together just to, talk about the amazingness of the present week of wrestling, but the real world has struck again. Jay, I know these are hard times in this country, not just with COVID, but with the actions of our moronic for the next 20 days or so president. How are you doing on these rough first days of 2021?
Well, got a great result in Georgia, so I'm happy about that. I think it's great progress for the country, whether you're a Republican or Democrat. Really, the fact that so many people came out to vote in Georgia, which I think was fantastic. As far as what happened yesterday, I mean, the stuff that happened in Georgia, the election, Biden getting elected, Obama years, all this stuff is correlated, right? So none of this stuff really shocks me anymore. So it kind of is what it is. It's not something. It's something to be sad about for sure, but it's something also where our country needs to do better. We need to do better as a people. We need to be better to each other. We need to do better. And hopefully that's what happens. Let's talk about wrestling because it was a fantastic night in wrestling as we presumed it would be. New Year's Dash, I did not watch at all because Corey said it was not a great show, so we won't talk about New Year's Dash, but we can definitely talk about Wrestle Kingdom, which was, I watched wrestling for 4 hours Monday, 4 hours Tuesday, 4 hours. It was just a great week in wrestling so far.
Actually, 5 hours because we watched a really good Myron Reed versus Leo Rush match with Leo Rush, of course, from the MTV's competition show, which our social media angel from You Don't Know Jackie podcast told me that Leo Rush was on. So he's also on that competition show. So apparently that does well too. But congratulations to Leo Rush on winning the MLW title. Fortunately, we may not have that much time to talk about it this week, but if we do get a chance, was a great match. It's on YouTube for free. You go out of your way to watch it. But Jay, I guess we could start with Wrestle Kingdom, but the big story coming out is something that, happened a couple of years in the making. The day after Wrestle Kingdom at New Year's Dash was when AJ Styles was thrown out of the Bullet Club. The last time that these five men were basically in the ring together. Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and the Good Brothers. Last night they rejoined each other. I don't know if they'll be called the Bullet Club. They might be called the Band. It might be called something else, depending on commentary last night.
They can't call it the club either because of AJ's thing.
Right, and who knows what WWE might do to counteract if they put Finn Balor back together with AJ or something, and who knows? But it's amazing. A couple of years later, and still the biggest thing in the industry. And if you saw the last couple of nights, is still members of the Bullet Club. And I put up on Wrestling Life. Did you watch it? Is it just a cheap pop? Was it awesome? Were you watching NXT? We had a pretty much, a little bit of a mixed bag. I think it was like 5 people initially when I first looked at it said that, just another cheap pop. 4 people said that, cool. And another like 1 or 2 people said watching NXT. And then of course we had one of our guys, one of our other shows, Felipe, Total Basis podcast. What real life was going on. And unfortunately, they get a chance to watch it yet. But Jay, I'll let you get first crack at this. What'd you think of the reformation of the Bullet Club? Was it just a cheap thing to draw a rating, or was it cool? Was it?
Yeah. I think one thing I want everyone to think about too is, right, and I think Corey and I really got in on New Japan at like the perfect time. It was kind of like right at the end of AJ's run, and he was wrestling those spectacular matches. I think the first Wrestle Kingdom I watched was the AJ Shinsuke match for the IC title. Yeah, so I think that was the first one that I watched. And I think Corey and I were lucky that we kind of got in on it early. And you see the influence. The Bullet Club was in a main event of NXT. The Bullet Club was in the main event of AEW. And that Bullet Club's a big reason why AEW is around. Maybe the biggest, probably the biggest. So New Japan's influence and the Bullet Club's influence on pro wrestling is just, I mean, probably the most influential group stable of all time. You'd have to say. NWO obviously gets a lot of love too.
Horsemen,
Um,
right?
Four Horsemen, but like, look at how they've dominated wrestling. Other than the main roster, because Vince doesn't know how to book someone who's not 6'8". But just spectacular stuff. Uh, as far as the reformation of the Bullet Club, I mean, we'll see. I think they could really make it interesting, because the Bucks didn't want to be involved. I don't want the Bucks to go full heel. I really hope they don't do that. I like the idea of telling the story of the Bucks being, because I think this is the best that the Young Bucks have been in AEW, other than their match with Page and Omega. That was a great feud. That was a great feud. But as champions, I think they've really done well. I almost think like this is where they were supposed to be all along. These babyface champions who take on all challengers, like that's what they should be. And I think they've embraced the role. They've put over other tag teams. They've been really good. So I don't want this to go back to, and the Young Bucks also are kind of awkward heels. They've always been kind of awkward heels. And so, I hope that this kind of evolves eventually into a Good Brothers Young Bucks tag match, which I think it will, with Omega having to choose. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways they could go. I worry sometimes with AEW because they have these interesting ideas and then it kind of falls flat. But I think this is potentially something that could be really, really interesting and a big deal. So, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, they had the Elite are wrestling next week, so you knew that was coming. So I think there's some interesting layers to this, and there's some interesting ways they can go for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we'll talk about this more, as the show goes along, but you can more than likely say, and I know Jay will say this because he watched the show first and he was really, really big on it. You could say that AEW's last half hour was the whole entire show, and NXT as a full 2-hour product was a better show this past week.
It wasn't even, it's not even close. It's not even close.
But especially when you have, silly things like Abaddon going against Sheeta, and stuff like that, which,
here's the thing. It's hard. I don't even want to do the comparison because NXT had a takeover-like show. AEW didn't have a pay-per-view-like show. They just had a good show. So it's kind of hard to, it's hard to compare. Yeah. Their last match with Omega and Phoenix was great. Not better than O'Reilly and Balor, but yeah, I don't think it was even close, but a very good match nonetheless, for sure. So, but that angle was and that's why AEW continues and will continue to do better in the ratings because they still have those angles that are like, NXT just can't do that. NXT is losing 2 of their biggest stars like in the next week, right?
Well, if the reports are true,
listen, they both lost in a big show. That's what we're hearing. That's probably what's going to happen, right? So, and if they don't go this week or next week, they're going to go at some point. So you have NXT losing people and AEW gaining people and making big stories and big angles. So as good of NXT's wrestling is going to be, they just can't compete with angles like that and losing stars.
So let me ask you this, though. And I think I might have brought this up on the Wrestling Life Facebook page. How long do you want to see it go for, and how long do you think it will, this Bullet Club reunion? Do you think this is setting up a bigger thing where the Bucks go and are part of this for as almost like as just inside, like, agents where, they're there to go and get the false hope of Don Callis find out what he's really doing, and then within a couple of weeks they're going to turn and be guys who are really there for AEW? Or do you think this is a couple of month build as the big angle for the first half of the year? Where do you think this Bullet Club reunion, including the Young Bucks, is going? Like you said, you like them better as baby faces.
Yeah, they're absolutely better baby faces. I don't know, Corey, because a couple of things. One, you would think, okay, AEW is going to do a long-term story. And they tried to do that with Hangman and Omega. I think it was a little awkward, to be honest with you, but they got there with the match. I think the Bucks and Page and Hangman build was very good. One of the best builds I think they've had for any match that they've had.
Sure.
The FTR Bucks build was horrible.
Horrible build, great match, right?
It was a horrible build, great match. But honestly, I remember how bad the build was more than how good the match was. That's the way that I look at it.
Yeah.
So what they're gonna do here, who the hell knows? I think they need to take their time. I think they need to figure this out. I think they need to go slow. But AEW kind of has that thing where they rush things. So I really would like to see them take a while, and I really would like to see them do this as a slow build. To eventually the Young Bucks against the Good Brothers, which could main event, which would definitely main event a Dynamite and maybe main event a pay-per-view. They've talked about the idea that eventually they want one of these tag team matches to main event a pay-per-view, and Bucks, Good Brothers probably would be it. So there's a lot of ways that could go, but man, I just, again, we could, go into Sting's out there again every week. We didn't want that. So I worry that AEW is gonna rush this. I think Tony Khan's greatest strength is his biggest weakness. He's a huge wrestling fan, which means he wants to do great things, wants to put everyone over. But I think at the same time, the storytelling aspect sometimes gets lost in with length of time and things like that. So we'll see. I think it should be a long build. Eventually there being consternation with Omega and the Bucks, and eventually them turning on them. But I don't know where it goes.
I mean, I'm somewhere in the middle where I think that this could be a big ratings bonanza for them. I mean, of course, with everything going on in the real world this week, both shows were significantly.
So Corey, hold on. I have a question for you about the ratings bonanza. Now, we did put on you put on Wrestling Life, about people being interested, and they were kind of like, Mets and Mets. And I'm not counting the stuff that happened in the world yesterday. That's a different story. Is Gallows now? They're only adding Gallows and Anderson. That's it. That's all they're adding. Adam Cole's not coming.
Right.
AJ's not coming. So they're adding two more guys released by the WWE again to form, the Bullet Club, right? Are Gallows and Anderson and this angle going to be a ratings bonanza? I don't know if I think it could be interesting. I think it could be good television. I would not say this will be a ratings bonanza.
It's an interesting point. I mean, I also think I put in somewhere that I think you're also going to have, because I still think the end game is that the guy who beats Kenny Omega for the title will be Hangman Page. I think that's a long-term story here. And one of the things that I don't know if you caught, because I know that some weeks you're doing 1,000 things, you don't get a chance to hear the commentary for some of these shows, is that one of the things that they did say was they congratulated Kota Ibushi on winning the IW.
Oh yeah, there's been a lot. There's been a lot more New Japan talk. A lot more. They mentioned that Omega and Okada were voted match of the year in 2017, or the greatest match ever, which it was, or the greatest Wrestle Kingdom match, I should say. So they were like referencing Wrestle. I mean, this is Okada. We don't have to get into that too much, but Okada mentioned having some type of relationship with AEW. I mean, this is going to happen eventually, right? I don't think it'll happen anytime soon because of our restrictions and COVID and stuff like that. But I absolutely think this is something that down the line will happen.
So I think there's layers that will bring in different parts of fans. I think the momentum built from this and other things that they could do. I mean, I don't think, the wedding in a month is going to be this big ratings draw, even though weddings usually are. But
Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford are not over, so it absolutely will not be.
And I mean, Miro's wearing wacky things every week, but we'll see if they ever actually decide to build them. That's for another week. But just the idea of, I think that they can build things slowly with one major angle after another. But I think it could work into building something big with different companies working together and seeing how the progression of the Impact is going. And like, I fully expect next week you're going to see something. At least I'm hoping something with Rich Swann and the Motor City Machine Guns coming in to promote, the Hard Target pay-per-view, which it only sounds smart for them to do possibly, So I don't know. I think it's going to be a very interesting seesaw of how they balance all these things and what people are interested in. So I think just based on internet buzz, and I know Twitter isn't real life, and it actually, people can go and talk about Twitter, and then no one actually watches the product. But I think the amount of interest that they have on Twitter, I think makes you think that this could be an angle that could work.
We'll see. Follow up is always the key, right? It's an interesting way they can go, but how they follow it up is the key. It'll be interesting. Hard to Kill Impact is in a couple of weeks, and it'll be interesting. Yeah, next week. So that's a week from now. You're right. Next Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there with the pay-per-view. I might watch. I don't know. We'll see. But so that how do they kind of weave all those things in? Because here's the thing for Impact, right? Nobody cares about Impact except for Gallows and Anderson. Not for nothing. I mean, I love those guys. Machine Guns, Swan, all of those guys. But Gallows and Anderson are the two guys that people care about from Impact for AEW. And where they go, we'll see. The follow-up with AEW sometimes is real dicey, man. I mean, it's not always great. So I'm not going too nuts about this just yet.
Yeah, I mean, we will definitely see. And the other thing quickly, because we have 1,000 things to talk about this week, that I really did enjoy this week on Dynamite was the continued progression of the Inner Circle storyline. I didn't think the match was very good. I mean, I thought Wardlow worked hard trying to carry, Hager, who I'm not sure why he's still in wrestling at this point, except for that wonderful paycheck I'm sure he's getting. I thought that, the stuff they did with MJF, continuing to be the snake in the grass and continuing to go and slowly be that guy, that real type of character that after the loss, he went to the locker room and said, you know what, I wanted to see how you were doing. And you could slowly see how those seeds are still going. How MJF is going to slowly lead to that full face turn of Jericho at some point where MJF takes over leadership.
Oh, you think it's going to be a face turn?
For Jericho? Absolutely.
Oh, for Jericho. Yeah, absolutely. They're ready for that. Where MJF is gonna have turn on the group or whatever. Yeah. Again, long-term storyline. And I wonder with some of this stuff, right? So Tony Khan is the guy who writes the shows and whatever, but everyone gives them their ideas. Jericho, we know what he is. He's a legend, one of the best wrestlers of all time, one of the most creative minds of all time, maybe in pro wrestling. So Khan really takes Jericho's stuff and lets it ride. And so, I wonder with, I know the Bucks are executive vice presidents and yada, yada, yada. How much influence do they have? Are they going to have in these stories? How much influence is Jericho having in his stories? Because the Inner Circle thing has been pretty, some of the promos have been a little bit long, but the stories have been interesting. They've been trying to really do a good job of telling long-term stories. So I've enjoyed what they've done with them. And the Wardlow Hager match I thought was good. Good kind of big man match. And you like to see that big man who can actually wrestle. So that's kind of fun to see. So yeah, I'm very curious to see where they go moving forward with that. But obviously they're continuing that long-term story, which I'm excited about.
Well, let's be honest. The best big Haas match this past week on TV was not on the main roster of WWE or AEW. It was on NXT with Rhea Ripley and Raquel Gonzalez, and then also Damien Priest, who we'll talk about more in a minute here, with his his graduation present, helping try to put over Cross.
Yeah, I mean those matches were. I mean the Rhea Ripley match. I know some people, in wrestling life, we're kind of questioning Raquel Gonzalez, and someone compared her to Nia Jax. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Is she Io Shirai in the ring? No. But is she a really good big woman, right? Is she a really good, big woman's wrestler who can work? Absolutely. She does her style really well. And I think she's absolutely fantastic. I think she's fantastic. And that match was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so let's get into it. You kind of mentioned it without actually mentioning it earlier, but there are reports out by the Twitter account Wrestling Votes and Dave Meltzer and also Sean Ross Sapp on Fightful Select has confirmed the fact that Damien Priest looks like he'll be going up to the main roster. And there was actually conversations of him actually going up the main roster this past Friday and having something to do with the Roman Reigns, Kevin Owens situation going there, but that got nixed. But he could be on his way fairly soon. And also with Rhea Ripley doing the clean loss, helping put Raquel Gonzalez to that next level, I would think it's becoming more and more clear that she'll be either a known entrant going in or a mystery entrant going into the Royal Rumble, maybe not winning it, but having, the big debut as we had last year with the EST of NXT at the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mercedes Martinez is the next challenger for Io Shirai. And then Tony Storm, and she has so many challenges, it's ridiculous. But I think Raquel Gonzalez becomes the next women's NXT champion. And so we'll see when that happens. As far as Damien Priest, he was supposed to go to SmackDown. It's supposed to be Kevin Owens' best friend, but that got nixed by both Owens and Reigns because they're like, that doesn't make sense. Why would he be Kevin Owens' best friend? And that makes sense. They don't seem like they would go out together too often. So that makes sense. But now he's going to go to Raw. So he really should try to stick it on his because God knows what's going to happen to him on Raw. He's a perfectly made guy for Vince. He's a big guy. I think he really got a lot better from being in NXT, from working with really, really good wrestlers. He can talk. I think he's got a good gimmick. I think his gimmick can transition either to babyface or to heel really well. And he can be kind of a natural at both, really, because as a babyface, he was really much better than I thought he was going to be. So I really like him. I just am terrified for what he'll be on the main roster. In terms of Rhea Ripley, it is funny with the women. Sometimes, maybe because Vince is not, I don't know whatever his deal is with the women, but I feel like when the women come up, a lot of them, if they seem like they're going to be stars on NXT, they end up becoming pretty relevant characters on their main show. And so I think Rhea Ripley was in a big match at WrestleMania already. I think maybe the best match of WrestleMania. And, I think she can be potentially a pretty big star. So, yeah, I see her going to the main roster, Raw or SmackDown. I would say that she's bulletproof in terms of them not fucking her up. But I certainly can't say that for sure. Look at some of the people they've had in the past. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with both of them. But I'm excited to see them on the main roster for sure. But again, this is, NXT keeps losing people and not gaining anyone. They need to get Ethan Page. They need to get somebody in there. They really do. NXT needs some new blood.
They need the Karate Man.
Maybe not that gimmick, but they need Ethan Page. Ethan Page could work there for sure.
I mean, there are some guys still out there. You still got Trey Miguel. I mean, you got the Rascals who could be coming up anytime now. I was actually going to get into them later on with the Dusty Classic. I was surprised they weren't one of the teams that was named. But if we have time, we'll try to get into that. But yeah, I thought both matches were good. I thought NXT as a whole was a very solid show. I'm very interested to see where they go next in regards to this world title situation. We know it's going to mostly be Karrion Kross, but do you think they go February with the Valentine's Day show, or do they wait till WrestleMania? And if not, is Pete Dunne the next challenger?
Good points.
Occasionally it happens.
Probably. Well, you think it's going to be Pete Dunne because he's not going to win the title.
And he's also not in this Dusty Classic. So
yeah. So he's not going to win a title. So you'd think they'd have Balor beat Dunne and then Balor lose to Cross because they love him. So you would think it would be Dunne against Balor at Valentine's Day Massacre. They're going to have to heat Pete Dunne up a little bit and get him some big wins before then. So, how they get to that will be, now again, he could challenge for the title tomorrow. He's an over enough guy, but they are going to have to figure that out. And so, yeah, we'll kind of see what they do there with that.
I think it's an interesting problem to have. I mean, I do think it's going to be interesting what they do with the Undisputed Era going forward. I mean, you have Cole and Strong and the tag team tournament with Dusty Classic. But Kyle O'Reilly's now lost twice for the title. He lost by submission this time. Looked like he might, I don't know if it was a worked angle, but looked like he might have got hurt in the match. It's going to be interesting. You saw his reaction after the match where he looked visibly,
And where does he stay? Does he stay on a main event level, which they've kind of put him on? Does he drop down back to mid card? Does he challenge Johnny Gargano for the North American title?
I think that's
there's a lot of different ways that they can go with O'Reilly. We've talked about this in the show several times, so we can move on. I don't want to get into this too much, but they've got to figure something out with the Undisputed Era. They have to move them forward. And I don't know how that happens. They're all small guys who will just get buried on the main roster, so they have to stay in NXT. But what do you do with all those guys moving forward? I don't know.
We'll talk more about NXT and AEW next week, which both of them look to have on paper, another two good shows. Darby versus Cage. We're going to finally get that. We'll see. They decide to, change the title or how much, Sting actually gets involved with his bat, as a defense mechanism against Taz. But Jay, let's get into Wrestle Kingdom, the main event of the week. We all thought that, over 2 nights last week with Sean on the show, we did a really good analysis on this. I didn't think the show was going to be as good as it was because, you could never, in your own mind, you always go, this could be a really good show, but not everything could go as planned. But all of the big matches besides, Tanahashi versus the great, I really, really suck at wrestling, Okan, and I think Sonata versus Evil kind of underachieved. Besides that, every other big match really delivered in major ways.
Yeah, no, I thought night 2 was much better than night 1. But there were just some tremendous matches. Obviously, for anyone listening to this, if you get a chance to watch Wrestle Kingdom, it was just a great night. Obviously, absolute Jay White's best match. I did note this on Wrestle Life and on Twitter. We are at Work to Shoot Pod, both on Instagram and Twitter.
Very nice.
Kota Ibushi is the best wrestler in the world right now. To have a back-to-back nights like that where you're wrestling 30 minutes and 50-minute matches and killing it and wrestling great matches, and different style matches too, right? Like the Jay White match was a very different style match because it was a heel versus a babyface, whereas Naito was a little bit more babyface. So wrestling the two different styles, wrestling it was a tremendous night. Shingo and Cobb, I'm a big Shingo fan. For you guys who haven't seen him, if you can check him out, he's becoming my new Shibata. He's becoming like my new guy. He's not there yet. He's got a long way to go, but he's just a guy that every time I watch him wrestle, I love his style. I like guys who, when they wrestle, they want to kick someone's ass, and they also have a good move set, and they also know how to tell a good story. And he really seems to have all those things. And I mean, he looks like he's hurting you. and so, yeah, he looks like a badass. So, and I think it's funny with New Japan. I think for people who are listening to this podcast, who are watching us on Wrestle Life, New Japan is way different than anything you see in American wrestling because, you don't know about these guys' promos. You don't know about a lot of these guys. So you kind of have to go by, do they seem to have charisma? Do you like their outfit? Do you like their moveset? So it's like way different in some ways than the US. Like I might love Shingo, but then if he can't talk his way out of a paper bag, maybe I wouldn't like him as much. So it's just very, very interesting. So again, I would absolutely encourage people to watch New Japan because it's just a different style of wrestling. They tell stories really differently. There's only one thing about New Japan I don't like, other than when they take a little bit too long to put people over.
Toriano?
No, every match has to have the guys hitting each other for 15 seconds. Every match is like, we got to hit each other for 15 seconds and say, come on, hit me, blah, blah. Every match doesn't have to be that. Other than that, I mean, New Japan is just unbelievable.
I put on
And Jay White's promo and everything, just great stuff.
I mean, I put on our Twitter, as you said, for at Work Shoot Pod, that for years Jeff Cobb played a monster on the underground, Lucha Underground, and I feel at Wrestle Kingdom Night 2, he became a monster. Actually, he was no longer playing one.
He lost a match.
Yeah, but
he looked dominant.
He
didn't. No, yeah. He doesn't. He was not. No, you can't be a monster. You lose the match, Corey. You can get put. Here's the problem with. So we can talk about this, and just for you guys who don't know, New Japan has this new stable with Will Ospreay, Great Okan, who sucks, and Jeff Cobb. And so Jeff Cobb, you guys may know him, Ring of Honor. He was in AEW for a little bit, things that like that. Jeff Cobb has already had these great matches in the G1. Will Ospreay has already had these great matches. They don't need having a matchmaking performance on Wrestle Kingdom doesn't mean shit because they've done this already in the G1 a bunch of times. We've seen this. Now there's certain guys are telling different stories, right? So Jeff Cobb's beat Shingo a bunch. So they're telling the story of Shingo overcoming all those losses. I get that. Ospreay, there's no reason for him to lose. Doesn't make any sense. And then Great Okan sucks, so he could lose until the cows come home. But they certainly didn't put Empire over. He didn't look like Jeff Cobb looked like a really good wrestler. He did not look like a monster because he did not win the match. You can't look like a monster if you don't win the match.
All right, I'm going to use your logic against you because you always tell me I'm too big on wins and losses mattering, and you tell me sometimes it's the performance and how how dominant you look and it's the momentum and stuff. Maybe I'm missaying what you've said, but I feel like you've said to me in the past.
He's had great performances though in the G1. This isn't a new guy we don't know anything about. This isn't like, oh my God, we've never seen Jeff Cobb before. Or Will Ospreay before.
Yeah, but you know what? This is on a new stage, a bigger. This is basically his first match. I believe this is his first singles match at Wrestle Kingdom. His first year when he was in the G1, a lot of people said he was one of the worst guys in the G1. This year, he stepped up. And then this year, he went and starting out a new character where a lot of people have said in the past that he's a really good worker, but he's very bland and, he's just another guy. And I feel like coming out of this match,
I mean, he still looked bland. I mean, he wrestled a great. He had a carry. He as our good buddy Sean Reamer, who helped us preview Wrestle Kingdom, he had the same outfit. He looked like the same. He didn't do anything different. They just gave him more time to wrestle a better match. He didn't look different. He wasn't in a different outfit. He looked like the same guy that he's been, except they gave him more time and he wrestled one of the best wrestlers in the world. And they had a great match. So, I don't think he looked any different. I just think they gave him more time to shine and he had a great opponent. So I'm fine with Shingo winning because I love Shingo. So it doesn't really matter to me. I have more of a problem with Ospreay losing to Okada, and then Great Okan sucks, so I don't care. But you can't have this. Oh my God, we have this huge stable in New Japan. All these heels, they're gonna come out and they're gonna kick ass, and then all three of them lose a month and a half later. That doesn't make sense to me. But again, New Japan, we know it's traditionally slower with building guys than other. Look at Kota Ibushi. Right, we've been saying for years they need to give this guy the title. Also, for the record, and we don't need to go too much with New Japan because a lot of our audience may not watch New Japan. Can we take one of these belts off these guys? Can we start with the double champion?
Well,
can we just have one champion?
Yeah,
I think they should just give one of the titles up and then have a tournament for the title. Don't unify them. Then what happens to the other title? No more IC title? That doesn't make sense.
I mean, I think that would make the never open weight title mean more, where it's what Shingo has by making that the number 2 title, and I think that's what they try to do this year. And I think it would have been more. I don't think the open weight title should be the. I don't think the open weight title should be the second title. That's a title. You can have hardcore matches. You can do kind of stupid shit with it. You can put it on someone who maybe isn't ready yet. Like,
like I don't think that should be the second title. They haven't built that to be the second title. The IC title should be the second title.
And maybe you're right. But the other guy you just want to go and say something about before we move on was Hiromu Takahashi. Had two huge, great matches. His first night versus El Phantasmo was an excellent match. I'm glad that El Phantasmo had a moment to shine as a guy who over the last 2 years has had great matches, and he's continually, as guys continue to leave and move on, is getting more and more of as a vocal point in the Bullet Club, which I truly enjoyed. And then his match the following night versus Ishimori was another great match, and it was a good sign that it was the first time ever that the co-main event or on the second night was for the junior heavyweight title. And then on the following night, you wound up having on New Year's Dash, they set up Hiromu versus Show, which could be one of your best matches, junior heavyweight matches of the year. Following those two matches sounds hard to believe, but the momentum of Hiromu, I think, and we spoke about this off air, by the G1 this year coming up, I think he'll get the shot that Kushida never got, and he'll be in the G1.
Yeah, we'll see. I think maybe the idea that he's truly the ace of the juniors, but to make the juniors mean more. However, to make the juniors mean more, they need to get more bodies. So I think that's where it's going to be. And then how many people can you take out of the junior? You take the biggest star of the juniors division. Then you have a lot of guys who are like, I don't know. So we'll see. He was obviously spectacular. He again is an amazing, amazing wrestler, and had some, had great matches. The Ishimori match with him, I mean, out of all the matches, maybe the third best match, maybe the second best match of the whole of both nights. So just tremendous work by both men. And Hiromu and he said in his press conference that he wants to take the belt to the next level. And he said he wants to take the junior heavyweight belt to the next level. So that makes me think he's going to stay in the junior heavyweight division. But they've never elevated the junior heavyweight division, and they had some great talent there over the years, and they really haven't, pushed that to where I think it should be. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But obviously, Hiromu was a guy that's going to push. They need a combatant, though. They need a big time guy to go against him, and maybe with the pandemic that opens things up. Maybe there's a guy from New Japan who's there now. I know she's going to go against Show. I mean, it's fine. It'll be a good match, but he's not a main event level guy. He needs to go against someone at his level. So we'll see what they do there.
Yeah, so we'll see where they go with that. And last thing, and people could check it out on YouTube. Everyone should check out that Jay White promo. I thought that it was 9 minutes long, but I thought it was just gripping on him, just playing this character who's basically given everything he has, and it's just, I'm going home. There's nothing else I can do. He might come back as a babyface as a result of this, and I just think that he's one of those guys that if he was in, NXT or AEW, the way he talks, the way he works as a heel, I think he could be a big time player. And I do think it's more angle than anything else. I don't think his contract is up, so I don't think he'll be showing up in the Royal Rumble or in AEW anytime soon.
Yeah, Jay White is always a interesting figure. He's he's a very interesting guy to me. He obviously wrestled the best match of his career in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom. And he has a great moveset. He has a really good style. I think he intentionally wrestles slower because he's a heel and he knows that wrestling a faster pace will endear him to the audience. So I think he's a really, really smart wrestler, got a really smart wrestling mind, and is a great heel. So I think he was elevated a little bit too soon to be the leader of the Bullet Club after Omega and after AJ and after Balor, because they didn't have anybody. And I think, unfortunately, he hasn't recovered, I think, in all the fans' eyes. because AJ was around for so long and then did so great in New Japan. And Omega, same, Omega just was, his first matches were great. You're like, oh my God, who is this guy? And Jay White hasn't never had the opportunity to have that. And so I think it's always been a little bit more of a struggle for him. And I mean, Omega's ripped him. He's like, oh, they needed something to put over, so they pushed him. Right. So I think that's always been a thing that he's trying to catch up to the other leaders of the Bullet Club. So, but yeah, great work from him. He's a tremendous promo, and I think he really has a good mind for the business. I really do.
Yeah, so we'll see how everything goes. We'll keep an eye on New Japan over the next couple of weeks, as unfortunately, just like everywhere, the numbers of COVID have gone up. So, I mean, we'll see how their touring goes and how, things go in regards to, the next couple of months. And we'll check in more as they get back into, the New Japan Cup and other big things that go along. And we'll let you know if any big stories do happen. But Jay, let's go into one more, positive before we talk a little, negative, AKA main roster. Let's take, 2 minutes here. Myron Reed versus Lio Rush. MLW as a whole this past Wednesday, put out the free show on YouTube. I thought it was going to be a little bit longer of a show. It just wound up being the normal 1 hour. I thought it was a really fun show. You on Twitter had a couple interactions with the owner of the company, Court Bauer, who very liked some of your tweets. What'd you think of Myron Reed, the young GOAT, versus Lio Rush, and I guess the show as a whole?
Yeah, the show as a whole was solid. It ended very abruptly with the Kruger and Hammerstone match. It was like, oh, that's it? Show's over? I also didn't know if it would be an hour. So, so that was interesting. The Von Erichs, I think that they're okay. I think they're not DIY in the ring. I think they still have a lot of work to do. I think but they have like real natural, they do have some charisma, and I do think they have a lot of physical ability. They're guys I would like to see. I know they're in Hawaii and they spend time in Hawaii and that's where they live. Like, I would love to see them, like, Jim Ross always talks about this, like getting reps. Like, I'd love to see them get more reps and have more matches, because I really think they have the potential to be really good. But it was a fun match with the Dirty Blondes. There's no way they were going to lose that match. But the Lio Rush Myron Reed match, that was the most important match. And it's just, Myron Reed, and the reason why I think people should watch him, people who are watching us and listening to us in Wrestle Life, and anyone who listens to our podcast, because you're going to see him on your TV, on national TV eventually. He talks with a swagger. He has a way about him and a look about him, and he's great in the ring. And I think eventually he might fill out. He's very skinny, but he's like tall and lanky, so there's a chance he might fill out. And he just reminds me of guys that I've seen. I remember watching AJ Styles and NWA Wildside in 1999 or 2001, maybe it was. And I was like, that guy's gonna be a star, and it took a while. But I really think Myron Reed could be absolutely spectacular. I really do. And we'll see how long he's in MLW for. I think they have him signed for a little bit. And I think, according to Court Bauer, responding to my tweets, thank you, Court, that he's going to get a big push. And he should get a big push, because I think he's one of the best guys in MLW for sure. And I think he's a guy that if they're able to keep him, they can build a company around.
I don't disagree. And you know what? And when you take the title off him,
and he even didn't win the match.
And you take the title off him, and then you have him get attacked by Contra Unit with Fatu. I don't think that's by accident. I mean, I think you're gonna have the Hammerstone match. I don't think he wins the title. I could see Myron Reed versus Fatu at some point. I mean, you could have Fatu on the 20th face ACH. They promoted that in a graphic this past week, but I could see big things from Myron Reed, and I think that, especially with him losing the title and showing a little humility at the end of that match, I could see somewhat of a face turn in the near future.
I think they're absolutely doing a face turn because at the end, so Jordan Oliver was doing a face turn with Simon Gotch with his promo a couple weeks ago, and they ripped the chest protector off, and the thing that's what I said to Corbett. I go, you gotta get rid of the chest protector. It's too gimmicky, but so they ripped the chest protector. So I don't think I'll have the chest protector anymore. And he could be a natural baby face too. I think he has the ability on the mic to do everything. And I said this on Twitter, but I'm also going to say this on the podcast. MLW is a small company with not that many wrestlers that you would think should not really be able to do that well. But Court Bauer have scouted these like young, talented guys. And I really think MLW is always going to have that thing where they like have guys and lose guys, because guys are going to go make more money and be on national TV. But kind of what they've done with some of their guys, with Fatu, with Filthy Tom, it's really, really been impressive. And they're fun to watch. We don't have NWA, which how I felt about NWA. So they have this night on Wednesdays where you have a good show at 6, and then you have 2 good shows back to back. Well, I watched them back to back with NXT and AEW. It's been great. So a lot of props to Court Bauer for what he's been able to do with MLW. Whether you agree with all the angles or not, like some of them are like kind of goofy. He gives these guys the ball and says, "Go ahead, run with it." It's not scripted bullshit like we hear on Mondays.
I agree. So we did all the positives. Let's get into a couple of negatives before we call it a day here. So Monday morning was really good. Tuesday morning was really good. Wednesday was pretty awesome. Monday night.
It was a horrific show. It was a terrible show. It was a terrible wrestling show. If you would have said, hey, non-wrestling fan, watch this show, they would have said, why the fuck do you watch this?
Well, quite a few of them did. Highest rating, since March. Legends always bring the old timers always bring in. I mean, you had the huge thing with Cardi B retweeting, and that got a lot of buzz with her saying how she liked Melina and Sasha Banks. So I mean, there was a lot of positivity going on there. But I'm going to give full credit that Keith Lee and Drew McIntyre both worked hard. Still hoping that Keith Lee at some point gets that opportunity to be a main event guy and not 50-50 booked like everyone else in the company. But the thing I want to talk about quickly is, and I'm going to take a view that Jay may not expect here. In the 90s, Goldberg, yeah. I'm going to take the slightly here. I don't love the idea that he's ever wrestling again. He's one of those guys that if he never wrestled again, it wouldn't be long enough. But he's got 2 matches a year for the next, I think, like 2 or 3 years. So they've got to come. So we get one of them out of the way. We most likely will still get the Roman Reigns match. I'm guessing at some time. But you know what? I'm guessing that this match with McIntyre will be, most likely like a WrestleMania match, which he had against, Lesnar and others, where it's 4 or 5 minutes of just, big move. Hopefully he doesn't, knock himself out and give himself a concussion before the match and doesn't kill anybody. But get the match out of the way. Usually your title matches at Royal Rumble aren't always the most memorable. You had Bob Holly versus, Mark Henry, I believe, one year or something to that effect. So, I mean, you don't usually expect huge title matches besides, Rock versus CM Punk that year. So, I mean, I'm not fully against that. We had to get it out of the way. Goldberg, McIntyre, don't love it, but I'm not going to kill it because, like I said, Goldberg has to have these 2 matches, get one out of the way right away.
Why does he have to have the 2 matches? They release everybody. They seem to release everybody when they want to. Why not release him? His matches suck. He sucks. I mean, God bless him. He's making his money. I never hate on anyone for making money as long as they're not taking advantage of other people. You know that. Mm-hmm. So God bless him for that. But why is he? Here's the thing, and Dave Meltzer said this on Wrestling Observer. If some of you have been able to hear, he said they put Goldberg in the match because they didn't have anybody ready. How the fuck don't you have anybody ready? You have a 3-hour show every Monday night with guys, wrestlers. What are they doing for 3 hours, Corey? Wouldn't they be getting somebody ready? How do they not have anybody ready to go against Drew McIntyre when they have 3 hours of television every week? The New Day Miz segment was 35 minutes. They could have gotten a lot of people ready in those 35 minutes. It is just
obnoxiously ridiculous.
Ridiculous. And put Goldberg in a match. Fine. But why not put Goldberg in a match with a younger guy that he could make? And then you make somebody. Have him go against a Keith Lee. Have him go against, Sheamus is almost as old as he is, but have him go against, someone who's still on the main roster who needs to be put over. To have him go against the champion, why? Why do this? Why not put somebody over? And his matches are fucking terrible. He hasn't wrestled a good match since 1998. Why are we still having to watch him wrestle? Especially now, right? In the Attitude Era, some of the matches were real dicey. But the Attitude Era was a great, great promos, great stories, whatever. The wrestling we see today in ring is just outrageous. These guys they're all great athletes and spectacular. And we've got to watch this old shitbag wrestle in these matches. I don't want to call him a shitbag. He might be a nice person, but in the ring, he's a shitbag. We've got to watch this old guy wrestle in a match, and he's not good. He can't even fake it to make it look good. He got a concussion in a match, and he gave Undertaker a concussion. It was the worst match ever. And they're still giving him opportunities because he's going to draw. And you know what? To WWE's point, maybe he draws. But here's the problem. That's an indictment on your company. That's an indictment on your stories. That's an indictment on what you're doing every Monday and every Friday. Now, SmackDown, thank God for Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. That has been much better. But, it's not like that writing's been amazing either. Some of the undercard stuff still, is not amazing either. Build somebody up. Put somebody over. Watch NXT and AEW. Vince, I want them for a couple of weeks. And AEW, I have a lot of problems with them. But they do a really good job. Because it's not 50-50 booking. There are the stars, and there are the guys who are not stars. They clearly, the Joey Janela's, the Sonny Kisses, they are not stars. Brian Pillman Jr.'s, they're not stars. And that's okay. NXT, they have guys who lose most of these matches. That's okay. You can have guys lose matches and it's fine. But who wins on Raw? Drew McIntyre. Other than him, everybody loses all the fucking time. And that's why Goldberg has to wrestle this match, because nobody's over, because everybody loses. What's the point? What are we doing here? It's just, it's maddening to watch. And his promo didn't make any sense. He's talking about the young guy, Drew McIntyre disrespecting the young guys. Motherfucker, were you watching the show? He just did a promo with Hulk Hogan, putting Hulk Hogan over. He didn't disrespect anyone. Orton sat around saying he was going to beat all the old guys up and didn't do anything. Where was he at? Getting burnt alive, maybe. I don't know. But, it's just, it's tough to watch because they have so many talented guys. And, look at Mustafa Ali, how talented of a guy he is. In the ring, on the mic. He's spectacular. He's in the worst stable. The Job Squad was better than this stable. Right to Censor was better than this stable. It's really difficult to watch. And, and listen, if you like Goldberg and you're excited for him, God bless you. Whatever people want to do in their life other than be racist and homophobes and terrible people, if you want to like who you like in terms of wrestling, go ahead, be a big Goldberg fan. But man, I just don't get it. But here's the other problem. You know what Vince is gonna say? Look at the ratings, and then the same shit's gonna keep happening. That's it.
I just love how I could just say the one word. It wasn't retribution this week, but said the one word, and then I could just sit back for 10 minutes, look at my phone, and go.
Well, but Corey, it's such a problem with the WWE. How can they say they don't have anybody ready? What do they do for all these hours? I don't understand it. And this is a conversation for, we've gone an hour almost or whatever, right? So we don't have the time to do this, but eventually you and I talked about this offline a little bit. We've got to talk about the WWE's booking and how everybody is booked to be the same person and nobody's booked to be a star. And when you do that, and wins and losses don't always matter. We've talked about that. Absolutely. But sometimes they do. And you got to have some guys who are top guys and some guys who are middle and some guys who are bottom. You just have that. They had that in the 80s. They had that in the Attitude Era. And that's when the WWE was their most successful. So I don't understand why they can't go to that formula again. It's just, and maybe now guys are spoiled and guys feel like I don't want to be the guy who loses all the time. Then hire guys who do. I don't know. But they need to figure their stuff out, man, because it's rough. That being said, I'm sure Royal Rumble will be great. We'll be excited for WrestleMania. But it's a rough go. All right. We're the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. We're on Wrestling Life. We appreciate everybody who might be listening to us live. Anyone who listens to our podcast, we are at Work Shoot Pod on Twitter. We are Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. Work Shoot Podcast, Work Shoot Pod also on Instagram as well. The great Jackie Andy runs our Instagram because I would not know how to put up an audio clip if you paid me. So I really appreciate that. And we are on Facebook, Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. Just Google us, you'll find us. We are part of the Great Life Group podcast series, which we're really excited about. Dong City is on Monday, Total Bases on Sunday. Those are both baseball podcasts. And the reason why I highlight those, Francisco Lindor traded from Corey's Cleveland Browns for a bunch of jobbers, basically. Some guy named Andres Jimenez, never heard of him, not even a top prospect. All right. Anyway, so Dong City and Total Bases, I'm sure we'll talk about those, that big trade. You've got the Audible. We got the NFL playoffs. Very excited about that. As you see, big Green Bay fan, go Pack go. And the Browns, God bless them with Stefanski. We got the Step Back, which is the NBA podcast. So NBA is very interesting right now. And then you have us on Thursdays, Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. So check out all these podcasts. I really encourage you guys to do so. There are some really, really good content.
And you know what? There's another podcast that we are kind of part of, our sister podcast, Jay. The name of it just kind of forgetting what it is. Do you remember what it is? You don't know Jackie.
You don't know Jackie. Great comedy podcast. In our day and age that we have with all the COVID and this piece of shit president and anarchy going on in our world, it's nice to have some comedy, nice to have some fun things. And, it's nice that, the You Don't Know Jackie podcast is a great comedy podcast. Take your mind off the world for a little bit and all its problems. And you can get to see Corey made fun of for an hour or so.
We just did episode 80 this past week where we talked about what if the end of the world, what would you do? And of course, that was a ton of laughs. 20 more episodes till I could renegotiate my contract to, get, 1 cent more than nothing what I get now. So we'll see how that goes. But Jay, we've got one more subject to talk about. Like I said, we spoke about all the positives. So we'll talk about a negative guy. Well, say negative guy, but guy who got into a little bit of trouble during the Speak Out movement. Marty Scrull, who was the head booker of ROH, huge in-ring talent. Was
Paid a lot of money.
Was a part of the Bullet Club. I mean, he's finally, I'm sure because of the corporate environment with Sinclair, took a while to do with all the red tape, but he's no longer part of the company. They put out a text saying that we not wishing best future endeavors, but saying, you know, ROH and Marty Scrull have parted ways. What do you think is the future for him? I mean, with the way that
Corey, I don't know. What do you do with them? I mean, he, you know, AEW had the issue with Excalibur, right? And that was the thing from years ago,
right.
That an angle he did that the other wrestlers in the angle were okay with. And it came out that he did. And it came out that, you know, with the Black Lives Matter stuff. And like, I was fine with him being suspended because I think we need to be more cognizant of how we talk about Black people and people of color in general in storylines and angles. But you know, he didn't need to be fired. Like, he didn't do it right now, and he apologized for it. It was whatever. Marty Scurll's thing is pretty bad, like pretty bad. You know, potentially. You know, we know that he absolutely had sex with a young lady who was old, right? underage. So she was 16 years old, and I don't know how old he was. You know, whatever, late 20s, right. Whatever he was, right? And we know that happened. She said it wasn't consensual. He says it was, whatever.
In England, 16 is consensual, but it's still
wrong, it's gross, right? So like the problem is it's really gross, and you know, and I don't. Maybe he goes to NXT. You know, Riddle's there, and he's got some stuff going on. Velveteen Dream, I don't know what they're doing with him. He's still there. So maybe they take him on. Maybe they let this blow by for a few months. And I mean, look at Riddle. He's all over there showing Raw.
I mean,
Vince has had his own problem. He's had massive problems with women and sexual harassment and stuff like that. So maybe they say, you know, Marty Scurll, like, I mean, NXT need someone like him. They need a big time guy. I don't know how that would go over with his former, you know, old Bullet Club stablemates. I don't know if he's persona non grata with them or what the deal is. You know, I know Candice. Yeah, Candice LeRae. I was thinking about Joey Ryan, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure he got some type of payoff. You know, Ring of Honor gave him some type of money to, like, you know, say goodbye. And they've resigned a bunch of guys too.
Yeah, Bandito and
Mark. And Haskins. So, you know, I don't know. He's such a talented guy. So great in the ring. So great on the mic. I still remember those first matches I watched with him. With him, and I think it was Will Ospreay, and they were spectacular. The kind of different styles that they had. You know, I don't know. I just, it's hard for me because, like, the woman says he was consensual. He says it wasn't. I don't really like to get involved in stuff like that because it just all sounds really icky and gross. And I don't know if I were another company, if I could deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I would say on this is I know that everyone would think that the logical space is AEW because of the Young Bucks. And before he was let go, there was some BTE episodes where I believe it was right before Double or Nothing. He did a cameo there where, you know, they didn't acknowledge him there, but they did like an alternate thing where he actually was in the background.
He was going there, right? Like, Ring of Honor paid him a ton of money, made him the head booker, but he was going to AEW. That's an indisputable fact that he was going there. And that's why he was able to negotiate such a great deal with Ring of Honor, because he had so much leverage because he was going to AEW, and Ring of Honor felt like he was a top star in the company and they needed to keep him.
Right. And then, but the thing I'm thinking is the idea that the way that their idea is that they won't bring in Tessa Blanchard because of the negative idea of they want a positive atmosphere in that locker room, and because of her problems, I think it would be a total double standard. And sure, special wrestling and, you know, you feel like you can make money for a company, they'll do what they want. But the stand that they have against, Hulk Hogan, with Tony Khan said, Hulk Hogan will never be part of this.
But I think it's different though. Okay. One, Tessa Blanchard's issues have been with the wrestlers, and none of them get along with her. Marty Scrull has an allegation that was years ago. Now, I'm not saying he's not a horrible scumbag. I'm not saying that he is or that he isn't. I know that having sex with a 16-year-old girl seems gross, no matter what the legal age is in whatever country you're in. And I say that as a high school guidance counselor who works with, seniors, right? So I think it's all kind of gross. But again, maybe legal in England, whatever. That being said, if he comes into the locker room, he probably would be a positive for the locker room. So, where Hogan's thing also was out there. He said the N-word. He said he was horribly racist. That wasn't maybe, it wasn't that. It was terrible. And Corey, I'm going to say this. If that happened in our current climate now, with people actually like caring a little more about Black people, I think he would be gone. I think there's no way Hogan would have ever come back in any capacity. But because it happened a couple of years ago when we didn't care about us, they didn't care about us as much. It was, he was able to come back. But so with Skrull, again, this is an accusation from years ago. Maybe AEW says, let's try it. But also, one, they don't need him. They have enough guys on the roster. And two, it would also bring, it's one of those things, right? Like the Tampa Bay Bucks with Antonio Brown. They want to win a Super Bowl, so they're bringing in this guy who's a known scumbag into their midst. And they're like, is the risk worth the reward? We can win a Super Bowl, but we got to have this scumbag on the team. And for the most part, you haven't heard a lot about it. Mm-hmm. Is Marty Scrull a big enough star that he's worth bringing into AEW for the negative press that they may get? I don't think he is a big enough star for that, but with his friendships and things like that, AEW may feel like he is, or they may let this blow over for a few more months, maybe, into next year, and give him another shot. I don't know. It really could go either way. I don't see AEW signing him, but I'm not saying it's a 0% chance.
Yeah, in closing on this, I think his two options, at least in my opinion, are MLW will take chances on guys because it gives publicity to both ends. The person has a second chance, and also, a big name, even just coming in for a couple of spots, or New Japan Pro Wrestling being maybe part of the angle with Will Ospreay, with his new group being, with the connection with, the United Kingdom. I could see that maybe, and being them, they were rivals at one point. Now with him turning heel, that could be part of the storyline. And one of the guys who was in his ear was, after all this time, I convinced him that this is the way you need to be, the villain. You're taking up the villain thing. So, I can see that being.
Every now and then you come up with a nugget. Every now and, not, you guys have maybe listened to us a few times. Most of the time, Corey's nuggets, he don't have so many nuggets. Every now and then he gets a real golden nugget. What did we talk about earlier in this show? What does Hiromu need? Right? He needs a big-time junior heavyweight type of guy. Now, is Marty Scrull like a main eventer in American television? Like, I don't know. Maybe, definitely upper mid-card guy, maybe. It all depends, right, on how he's booked. I think he'd go to New Japan and be a top junior heavyweight. And what does Empire need? Empire has 3 heavyweights, and they have no junior heavyweight. And UK, that connection, whatever, maybe they won't be as worried about these allegations. I mean, look at Will Ospreay. He has his own stuff, right? So, you know what, Corey? I think we found a spot for him. You found a spot for him. I think him going to New Japan, would work for him. And he could rehabilitate his reputation, give him a couple of months there. And then maybe he comes back to the U.S., next year once, things have died down and, there's been no more accusations or no whatever. So, I think New Japan's a good spot for him for sure.
A lot of talk about Marty Scrull today, but interesting conversation.
So Jay, another really interesting show. Spoke about the crazy first week in wrestling. Spoke a little bit about Marty Scrull. Upcoming weeks, we'll talk about the Dusty Classic as we find out who all the teams are in the men's, and found out after the show that there'll be a women's Dusty Classic this year. It'll be interesting to see how that works out, and hopefully the winner gets a shot at the tag team titles. Way to get the titles off of them. But Jay, we spoke about a lot of great things. We've got a couple of big football games this weekend. You get a weekend to go and relax before you find out what team you kill in the second round. I'm going to go and hope that, no more COVID cases come out. But Jay, as always, the final word is yours. Please pray for Baker.
As the train goes by in lovely Chicago, Illinois, I think we're done here. See ya.